Whoa, oh, we are back for the 11th interview episode of Home Advantage Wrestling Podcast. I am not Sam Herring, but Jude Swisher, joined today by a very special guest. His name is Mark McKnight. I know him as Coach. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Jude. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really glad that I could finally get you on. For those of you who don't know Mark, he was a killer in youth and high school, and then he wrestled. He wrestled for Buffalo.
For 2 years, yes.
Buffalo, and then he transferred to PSU.
Correct.
He got fourth in NCAAs as a senior in 2007, right?
2008, close enough.
2008.
Long time ago, put it that way, Jude.
Long time ago. And then, you've coached in the state college area for basically forever.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's where I kind of got my start, was the state college youth program.
Yeah. So, we can just kind of hop into it. So, Coach Mark, where did you first grow up? Where were you from?
I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a little town southwest called Bridgeville. Pretty awesome place. It was kind of like right on the outskirts of the city. And so where I grew up, there were a lot of trees and fields and things like that. Then you could be in the city in 15 minutes. So it was kind of like best of two worlds. And now you go back to that area and it's all housing developments, and it's like the city kind of sprawled out, the metropolis headed west and south. So fun fact, Jude, right? I was 5 years old in kindergarten, and one of the local high schools or school districts was advertising for their wrestling program. And so I must have gotten a piece of paper that, had the information on it. And I brought it home to my mother and I said, Mom, I'd really like to wrestle. And there were a couple other things that I did at the time. It was gymnastics and t-ball. And they couldn't hold my focus long enough, like a little, wiry 5-year-old Coach Mark running around. And so she said, absolutely. And she took me to my local township team and enrolled me in wrestling, and the rest is history. I'm pretty sure when I said I wanted to wrestle, I was referring to the WWF.
Oh.
That's what it was back in the day. It was WWF. Now it's known as WWE. And like I said, I'm pretty sure I was thinking that's what it was going to be.
Go in and swing a chair or something.
Yeah, jumping off some ropes. I don't know, but basically I showed up and they were like, "All right, you get to do this to a kid, and you can grab him as hard as you want and try these moves." And I was like, "Yes," I was hooked.
That's awesome. Did you love it right away?
I did. I was a very aggressive person from the start, right? Combative, right from the start. Probably had something to do with having a little brother who is bigger than me. He's 6 foot 220 right now as an adult. So, I was 5 years old. He was 3. He's 2 years younger, and he was bigger than me. So I had to, we grew up wrestling each other all our lives.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it, Jude. It's almost like the sport shows me.
Wow. That, that's really, really cool. So did you ever have like a cognizant moment of being like, man, I love this? Or do you remember like that first time when it like spoke to you?
This is a very grueling sport, right? So there's a lot of ups and downs in it. So I'm kind of drawing blanks on maybe a specific time, not right off the top of my head. And I might be able to come up with one, but I do know multiple times from the beginning of when I started wrestling till even now. I find myself just very thankful and just very happy that I started something like this, and I'm continuing to do it. So I have those moments, I've had those moments throughout my life.
That's really, that's profound, just to keep realizing like how much, how important it is, right?
Like a perfect example is when we were wrestling one time at our club, and you almost had a takedown on me, and I got a little squirrely and then hit a duck under to a sweet headlock.
You kicked me. I had the single leg up in the air, and you jumped and kicked me in the chest with your other foot.
Yeah, that's exactly. So what I was getting at is that's times like that when I know I really love the sport and I want to keep doing it, and keep coaching and happen. So
yeah, man, that was. I thought my feet nearly touched the ceiling. You threw me very hard.
I know there were a lot of people watching, holding their breath because you almost took me down. So I had to, I had to make sure I finished with the exclamation mark and not you.
Right. You're right. Okay. So how good were you? Like, did you have like success like right off the bat in youth?
Actually, yes, I did. Couple things, I was a very, very gifted athlete. I could pick up technique remarkably fast. I was left-handed, which gives me a competitive advantage, and I was always like one of the lightest weights, so I never had to run through a gauntlet too often. Like at a tournament, how some of those middle weight classes just have like oodles of kids. Well, I'd be the guy moving up in weight just to get a match or two, and so it might have sheltered me. I don't know, or protected me, but I had a pretty decent first year, and then the second year was a little not as fun. I remember losing a little bit more frequently, and then by my third year, I won the PJW state tournament.
Wow!
And you know what?
How old are you? 8? Are you 8 years old?
I was 8. Guess who I wrestled in the finals?
Who, Coach Mark?
Coleman Scott.
Whoa!
I know, right?
Wow!
Future national champion for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Now that the head coach, Olympian bronze medalist, and now head coach of North Carolina. So
wow, that's really cool.
And let me throw this piece of information in there. Sure, guess where the state championships were?
I couldn't possibly, Coach.
Think Central Pennsylvania. One chance, try.
Oh, was it State College, Pennsylvania?
Yes, it was. I wrestled in State College High School. That's where the PJW tournament was in 1993, and
wow,
that's where I got my first title.
Wow, so it really came full circle. Really,
I know, it's crazy. I live there now. Well, I live in Bellefonte, same difference. I work in State College. Yeah. So and then from there, I kind of had your typical ups and downs career where you won. Like the next year, I took fourth. I went from first in the state to fourth, actually losing to Coleman Scott both times in that tournament.
Wow.
And, yeah, it's crazy. We wrestled like each other either first or second round, and he hit a spladle on me before anybody even knew what a spladle was. And he ended up pinning me, and I wrestled all the way back to third place, and he lost in the semis, and we ended up wrestling for third and fourth, and he beat me by a couple points or a point or something. I'm not sure. But what's awesome is you look at that bracket, and in that bracket, the top 4 guys all went on to be PIAA state champions. The guy that took first that year that won the states was Jake Strayer, he was my future teammate at Penn State. He's a one-time All-American for them, and he's now the head coach of Forest Hills High School, which is a pretty
Right.
awesome high school for wrestling, and so that's kind of cool. And then the runner up was Donnie Jones, who ended up being, I think, a 2 or maybe 3-time PIAA state champ for Greensburg Salem out in the Pittsburgh area. And then Coleman took third. His credentials speak for themselves. And then here I am bringing up the rear and fourth. So,
wow, how do you remember all this, Coach?
So my mother was very, very good at taking photographs. And she always kept newspaper articles, and she always had pictures. So every once in a while when I am cleaning my storage or going through some things, I'll look through those old photos, and it just kind of you just kind of remember it all.
It all comes back. That's
Yeah.
really special.
It is. It's cool.
What clubs did you wrestle at?
All right, that's a good question. So growing up, I came out of Western Pennsylvania, the WPIL District 7. That place is pretty cutthroat with competition, and back in the day, like that, like we're talking early 90s, there wasn't really too many places to wrestle outside of your local township and school district teams.
Yeah.
And which is complete opposite than now, because if you go back to Pittsburgh, there's a oodles of clubs there, and there's tons of different places to train. So I ended up wrestling for my local township team, and then my parents quickly realized that I needed to be also challenged a little bit more, and they liked the fact that I would go to these practices and come home tired and go to bed. So they found a local club called Cobras, and that was ran out of the Boys and Girls Club out of Carnegie, Pennsylvania, which is like just outside of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I grew up, and that's where I really think I started to take off, was because I surrounded myself with other people who were seeking more wrestling. And then so these guys, we're going to tournaments together, we're training together, and that's when wrestling really becomes fun, is when you make it a family thing like that, including your teammates and such. So
Right. So I know you wrestled at Angry Fish, right?
I did, yes.
Do you want to talk about Angry Fish at all?
Sure, absolutely. So, like I said, when I was a little kid, I had wrestled for the Cobras, out of Carnegie, Pennsylvania, and there were just a couple clubs, around town too, in different directions. And as I got older, there became more opportunities, and the demand for more clubs, started to increase. And I want to say towards the end of the summer of my going into my sophomore year. So this was after my freshman season of high school. A local wrestling club started just up north of me at North Allegheny, where I grew up. It's probably about 20 miles. And I, going to all these tournaments, you meet different people. And I had a friend there by the name of Jake Herbert, who kind of was like, yeah, come up and train with us at this Angry Fish Wrestling Club. And I was like, all right. So I go up there, and I meet the two head coaches, and I don't know these guys. I'm kind of like one of those out the window type wrestling fans, Jude. I don't really pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
Who's who and what's what. And I'm like sitting here, and they introduced me to the coaches, and their names were Ty Moore and Ray Brinzer. And I'm like, cool, these guys seem cool. And they go on to start running practice and things. And I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool. We got some good wrestlers in here, and things are going pretty well. Well, then I later find out that, these coaches are quite the accomplished wrestlers themselves, right? Ty Moore went on to be a 4-time PIAA state champion. And Ray Brinzer, I believe, won 3 PIAA state championships.
Wow.
and went on to be an All-American at Iowa. I think he took 3rd, I'm guessing. But he was up there. He was just a
Yeah.
high nationally level caliber guy. And it really worked out well for me because when I started coming, a lot of other guys kind of jumped on that bandwagon. So that room quickly became like a place that you wanted to be because the level of competition was really high. And then you had great coaching. Ray Brinzer, just phenomenal technician. Just taught me a lot of sneaky throws and things. And Ty Moore was kind of the operations guy. He actually kept me in check. Whenever I would lose focus or I started to be kind of a jerk or something like that, he was the guy that running back down to a level that I could be at. He wasn't afraid to grab me by the shirt and say, "Hey, man, like let's be cool and let's do the right thing and work hard and be good at wrestling."
Mm-hmm. So, so those were your coaches. What kind of training partners did you have?
By the end of my senior year, we had just phenomenal. We just kind of all had our own little groups of partners. And I
Yeah.
remember like Sundays was our like live day, and kind of like how we run our club, and people would travel to come wrestle us. And when I was in there like around my weight, Coleman Scott started coming up, and for 2 years we started battling every Sunday, and I mean I grew up wrestling Coleman, so it was kind of cool to for us to kind of put competition aside and just try to get better in the practice room, utilizing each other. But then it kind of goes up and down from there. We had a guy named Stephen Bell coming all the way from Connellsville, which was close to a 2-hour drive on Sundays. He went on to be an All-American at Maryland. He was around my weight class. Kerry Regner was a tough kid out of the WPIL for Blackhawk Wrestling, and he's the head coach of Millersville University. And he went on to have a really nice Greco career at Northern Michigan. So he was tough to battle, and every once in a while we had a couple other guys. Mark Throckmorton would come with Coleman Scott from Waynesburg, and he was a couple-time placer at States. And then you had upper weights that were just kind of filled too. You had Jake Herbert wrestling Jared King. Both those guys went on to be PIAA state champions and national champions in college. Which is crazy. And then you had Kurt Brenner was a 3-time PIAA state champion for Freedom High School, and he went on to wrestle for WVU. And then there's like one or two. You'd wrestle Ray, you'd wrestle Ty, and the coaching staff always tried to I don't want to say recruit, but they wanted to bring in and make the level of competition tough for us. And
yeah,
I mean, it was kind of cool. And then here we are, the Angler Fish Club. We're training together. Well, we'd go to tournaments and these dual meet things, and we'd wrestle pretty good. I mean, we had some really talented guys that just went on to kick butt.
What weight class did you wrestle in high school?
I was at 103 for 3 years, and then I jumped up to 19 for my senior year. My junior year, I really wish I didn't cut down. You know what? I was kind of pressured into it by my coaches and my parents, and just they were just talking in my ear like, Mark, you got to go down. Who's gonna beat you and this and that, and I didn't want to do it, and then I finally gave in, and I was very serious about it. I took the weight cut very serious, and I dieted well, and I got my extra workouts in, and I ended up falling short that year and taking third. actually lost to Coleman Scott in the
Again?
semis. What do you mean again?
No, I mean just how many times are you gonna wrestle Coleman Scott?
Let's see. Competitively, I wrestled him 3 times when I was a little kid. Maybe a couple times in no, I don't even. We wrestled 3 or 4 times in high school too. I know I beat him at the Powerade tournament, and then I ended up losing in the semis, and then he ended up beating me for 3rd and 4th that same tournament, and then the state semis we had wrestled in 2002, and I think we might have wrestled one more time. I'm not sure. I know he's responsible for like 20% of my losses, I think, in high school. So that's a pretty good stat because I didn't lose very often.
Yeah.
I think he was the only guy to beat me multiple times in high school for sure.
Wow. That's incredible.
I know. Isn't that wild? It's just crazy.
Yeah. So whatever happened to Angry Fish?
Good question, Jude. So we kind of had the core group of guys. We had this momentum for like 3 or 4 years, and then like anything, like any high school team or club or anything like that, these guys start to graduate and then they go off to college and have college careers, and then they're training internationally or they just move away and life happens, and that's kind of what happened as slowly as some of the older fish that I wrestled with started to graduate. We just never really recouped that population, and then Ty Moore actually kind of just he I remember him telling me he just kind of it wasn't the same once his original fish were gone, and he kind of struggled with that, so he kind of stepped down, and Ray stuck it out for a while and ran the club, and then he kind of just up and moved him and his family to Brooklyn, New York. So it just kind of dissolved slowly, and there's still some residual effects from it, and there are still a handful of kids that might have been really young who are now in high school that had come to those to that club, but it's kind of like it's almost disappeared. Now us fellow fish that we are, we still have a lot of pride in what we were able to accomplish and what we did together. So we won't exactly let that name never die. Right. But as far as from a club standpoint goes, it's currently doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's tough. Tough. You are a fish to wrestle, Coach Mark. I hope people know that when they wrestle you, that they're like, he's a fish.
Well, that's funny. When you say fish, you mean like what do you mean by fish exactly?
I don't know, Coach. You tell me. So, what were the years that Angry Fish lasted?
That's a good question. I know it started in '99, like the summer of '99, and I kind of missed that first year. I was traveling to like Mount Pleasant from where I lived over an hour just to get like freestyle workouts.
Yeah.
And 2000 is when I jumped on board. So it was around 99, 2000 when it started. And I'd say it ran all the way to about 2007, 2008, maybe, give or take a year.
Okay. That's a pretty good run. Coach, how seriously did you take freestyle?
Oh, I loved it. Greco was kind of my favorite. Again, because I had Ray Brinzer teaching me very, very high level technique, and I was already a student of the sport, and I had the skill set to do these moves and throws. And once I found out like how to do this stuff, like I fell in love with it. And the physicality of freestyle and Greco also fits my style and personality a little bit. So, you know, once I started fiving dudes and like doing straight lifts from the top position and sending people through the air, I was hooked. It's all I wanted to do. You know, Greco was my favorite for the longest time. Freestyle was probably my best because of my leg attacks. So
Yeah. Did you?
And I tell you what, it really does help with folk style wrestling. I mean, just the body awareness and some of the athletic abilities that you need to do that technique in freestyle and Greco. Just, I mean, that's only going to make you all around better wrestler.
Right.
I hope a lot of people realize that.
Mm-hmm. Did you wrestle in Fargo? I
did wrestle in Fargo, Swisher. I wrestled every year, both styles in Fargo for Team Pennsylvania.
That's right. One year you wrestled 14 matches.
Dude, I wrestled 14 matches in one tournament. I wrestled another 12 in the Greco tournament. So I wrestled 26 matches in 7 days with 6 weigh-ins. So you had to weigh in every day, and there was a weight allowance each day. So you had to make flat weight, 1 pound, 2 pounds on the third day, and then there was a day off, and then you wrestled freestyle. And
wow.
That year I took second and third, and I lost to the same guy in both styles.
Do you remember who it was?
Of course I do.
Of course.
It was Dustin Slater from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
He went on to be a national champion as a true freshman for Minnesota. And he placed a couple other times after that, I believe. If I got that wrong, my bad, Dustin. But yeah, and now he's a coach at the University of Minnesota.
Wow.
And he was a beast. He was a beast, man. I had him beating Greco, and I don't know what happened, but I gave up like a late takedown or something, and he went on to win the match. And then I wrestled him. That was in the semis, and then I went on to wrestle him in the finals in Greco or freestyle. I'm sorry, and he trap arm gutted me in the first period for I think 8 points total, and then this second period it was kind of all. It was back and forth, but I didn't score any points. It was 8-0. I mean, that didn't happen too often that somebody could shut me out like that. And then he went on. He won both styles that year. I think he got OW too. If he didn't, he certainly deserved it. Yeah. Swisher, it was crazy, man. The amount of wrestling that you did. I mean, you literally get off the mat and eat something, recover, and just get ready to go back out there.
Wow. How did you deal with that mentally? Being like, how did you just weather that storm of knowing I'm gonna have so many more matches?
That's something that's out of my control. So I didn't really take the time to think about that. You know, I just kind of went with the flow. I was kind of a go with the flow type guy, and so, oh boy, that's not good. Just passed the police officer, and we'll see what happens here, Swisher.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, by the way, I'm on the road, so that's why.
Yeah. All right, so let me see. Do you want to... Were you always like that? Were you always, just to go with the flow? You're just like, all right, let's just scrap.
Yes, I was. And, it was one of my best attributes. And it was also one of my worst attributes because, it was both good and bad. It was good from the perspective of, like, I went out there and I wasn't focusing on I wasn't really worried about losing or anything like that. I just went out there and scrapped and just for the love of the game and the sport. Right. But at the same time, I think it kind of inhibited me because I never really got serious enough to make goals. You know, as accomplished as you may say I am, I never really focused on goals that much. It was just something that wasn't really, or maybe I just ignored it, or it wasn't really talked about to me. I just went with the flow and did my thing when it came to wrestling. And like I said, it was good and bad. You know, if I could do things differently, I would probably, you know, set high goals and just, you know, try to stay laser focused and accomplish them. But, you know, at the same time, would have I enjoyed the sport as much as I have? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you, you're as a coach now, how would you help a wrestler who struggles mentally?
Well, for starters, what are you struggling with, right? That's what you got to get down to. Is it are you struggling with the weight? Are you struggling with this? Are you struggling with technique and you're just losing based on that? Or if you're talking from a mental standpoint, I would say you need to focus on the things that you can control, right? And that being said, you can't control who walks out on the mat against you, right? So you should not worry about that, right? That's why I don't look at brackets. When I competed, I stopped looking at brackets because I didn't want to know. I knew that if I went out there focused on being the best version of myself, that was the best chance Mark McKnight had at winning. So, you know, that you need to focus on your effort. Are you pushing yourself, and are you keeping positive body language with your head up and just, you know, trying your best at everything you do when you're out there? You know, those are the things that you can control, and I'd say that's what I'd say to a young wrestler. That's what you need to focus on.
Yeah. So that's that. You know, I know that I definitely had mental struggles, especially when I was really, really young. So
sure. Well, it's only normal.
It's natural, right?
It is natural, right? It's only normal. You'd be crazy to think like some of these top level guys aren't nervous before they wrestle, you know. But it's more of like, think of it as like a comfort thing, right? It's a comfortable nervousness.
Right.
I would call it excitedness. You know, instead of the word nervous, you're excited for this opportunity to go out there and wrestle a quality opponent. And you know, and our sports, it's one-on-one, it's mano-a-mano.
Yeah.
So it's all up to you. Nobody else can do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's transition this talks more into to you going to college. So, you know, young Mark McKnight graduates high school, and when did you decide that you were going to go to Buffalo?
Swisher, this is a hilarious story.
Okay.
All right. So I took some visits, and I don't exactly know why I wasn't recruited out of college a little, or out of high school a little bit more. Maybe it was because I was a 103 pounder for 3 years, and then jumped up 2 weight classes. But either way, I took some visits to some schools, and I went up to Buffalo, and I had a really nice time on my visit, and I actually really liked the assistant coach named Josh Koscheck. He was a Division I national champion for Edinburgh. He was from Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. So that was kind of close to home to me. And so we hit it off, and I just kind of was like, and I waited, Jude. I had these like college coaches calling me, and I was young and kind of ignorant to what I was being offered, you know, as far as like scholarship opportunities and an education. I didn't know what that was, right? I just figured like, hey, I'm a good wrestler, I'm supposed to get one of these. And I didn't really realize like how big of a deal it is. You know, now I do, obviously. So I basically, like, I want to say April, May. It was almost to the point where, like, you couldn't sign. It was like signing period was almost over, and I came home from work. I was a lifeguard at the local swimming pool, and I saw my letter of intent to Buffalo, and I signed it myself. I faxed it in, and I never told anybody. Like, my parents got home, and I think I told them the next day or something. I forgot, and so I went
Coach Mark.
I know, right? American round both times as a true freshman and true sophomore, and that's when I had to take a look at my situation, and maybe decided that a little change would have been was best for my career.
So what made you decide on Penn State?
Couple things. I took, so after I decided that I got my release and I was transferring, I started getting contact by some really big schools, because I had proven success in college. I didn't All-American, but I beat some really high-ranked guys, and I lost in the All-American round both years, again, as a true freshman and sophomore. So I went on multiple visits, and I actually went down to Virginia Tech, and I visited down there, and that was when Tom Brands was the head coach. And I really liked my visit. I enjoyed my time with Coach Brands, and I kind of had my mind made up, and I wanted to go to Virginia. I ended up going on a visit to Penn State because Ty Moore, the Anglerfish wrestling coach, was really, really good friends with Matt Derlin, who was the head assistant coach at Penn State at the time. And so I went on a visit there, and I enjoyed myself, and I was still leaning towards Virginia Tech. So I called Brands, and I started the whole process of, like, let's do this. And I ended up not being able to get in to school right away because I had poor grades. I had a really bad semester my freshman year, and that kind of caught up to me at that point.
Yeah.
And when each school, each conference has different requirements for grades, and
Right.
Virginia Tech, I would have been a lot of credits shy to be eligible for a scholarship and stuff like that. So that kind of was put on the back burner. And I went back to Penn State, and I said, well, what can you guys do? Here are my grades. Let's talk. And they said, we can get you in, and we'll do this, and this, and let's make it work. And I said, yep, because I figured Virginia Tech, just that wasn't meant to be, right?
Yep.
But Penn State said, hey, we got a green light for you, and I said, okay. And that was it. And it kind of worked out because that next year, Coach Brands, the Iowa job became available, so he left Virginia Tech anyway.
Yeah.
So I kind of dodged a bullet with that right there.
So, and obviously, like, you've stuck around State College for the rest of your life so far.
So far.
Okay, so let's make another quick transition onto when did you start coaching? When did you hop on the coaching scene for, youth and high school wrestling?
Well, one of the things that I've always been good with is kids. When I was a teenager, I would always be the kid or the guy that's the high school kid that's playing with the youth kids.
Yeah.
And I'm just I'm a big kid at heart. And when I started to go to college, I started doing clinics and working camps. So that's when I was exposed to teaching more. And so I started to gain momentum there and really, like, figure out how to talk to kids and people and coaches and teach the sport of wrestling. And then I think when I really, really set off on the youth was when I came back to State College in 2010 to wrestle for the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, and I needed something to help supplement some income because the regional training centers were just getting started, and salaries were kind of tight, and so I hooked up with Chad Dubin, who was the head coach of State College High School at the time. And he said to me, you want to run the State College youth program? And I said, absolutely. So
nice.
That was my first, I'm the head coach official youth program that I ran. And then
yeah, I think I started wrestling at State College, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12, 2011, 2012.
Yeah, so, I was still there. I was there from 2010 to I ended in 2012, I believe. I went 10, 11 was my first year, 11, 12 was my second year, I believe. And then I kind of wanted to do my own thing, at the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, so I started a program there.
Yeah.
So I could just not teach just kids at State College, but the whole, surrounding area.
Yeah. So you want to hear a funny story about my first ever wrestling practice?
Was I there?
I'm sure you were.
Doesn't matter. Let's hear it.
Here's my first ever practice. So already, I don't know, I was in kindergarten, and I was just so scared of wrestling. My dad's like, Jude, we're gonna take you to wrestling practice, and I was like, oh no. I was already incredibly nervous for that practice. I don't even know why. I don't know. But what made it worse, way worse, was they had a guest coach there that first practice I went, and it was Ken Chertow. And he was very, very, very loud. And I remember him just a whole bunch of screaming and a whole bunch of grabbing kids and throwing them around. And I was like, what is happening? And
chaos.
I was terrified. I was really scared. And I think my dad just took me into the corner with another little kid, and we just worked on double legs or something.
Sure.
It was, and ever since then, I look back at that practice, and it was, now it's really funny, but then it terrified me. So that's crazy.
I don't blame you. And you know what, Jude? Nothing against Ken or anything like that. I mean, I've been to his camps, and he does a great job. But I feel like that's one of the tough things about our sport is it's hard for kids to begin that sport. It's a hard sport to start out with because it is kind of physical. And if you don't know what you're doing and you wrestle a guy that knows what he's doing, it's not going to be that fun.
Right. Or even if you start out and you're not, I wasn't a fighter. I didn't want to fight. But and you said when you were a young kid, you grew up fighting with your siblings. I didn't do that.
Yeah,
we just sat around, play video games. But so it was learning how to fight is something that was definitely had to be learned, and it wasn't natural for me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So what were you saying? I think I might have cut you off there a little bit about you were saying shoot, I can't remember.
I don't really recall either, so we can transition, or we could talk about how just when you're running a youth program, that's one of the things that I've learned is you need to keep kids captivated and keep them coming back to practice, because one day it might just click for them, and they might find that little bit of aggression or turn into a fighter, and these are really good athletes, and next thing you know, he's throwing people around, and it's hard sometimes for kids to want to do that because they get roughed up, and practice can be kind of hard, and they don't want to come back, and they don't make it till that time where they might make the switch in their minds.
Mhm.
So and that kind of affects our sport because we're losing participation from that. So you got to find the happy balance and happy medium between the level of how hard you're going to run things and physicality, because you want to keep kids interested, but you also want them to get better. And that's one challenge that I know we're always dealing with as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty.
Yeah. What do you think the best way to keep kids interested in?
Well, when it comes to I don't think wrestling practice should be like, all right, half moves, 45 minutes live, because kids get tired. The skill level can be different between the two kids or multiple partners if you're changing all the time. So you got to find that balance where you could teach them to be tough at the same time as they're learning techniques. So maybe put them in certain situations where they might have to hold on to that leg a little harder, or they have to sprawl a little harder or do something, and almost disguise it as just quote unquote technique, but really you're just kind of toughen them up a little bit.
Yeah. I see that at like when I go to the M2 practices.
With the elementary?
With the elementary kids. Like,
yeah. You do a great job, by the way.
Thanks, Coach.
You're a good teacher.
I think you're a great teacher. So there.
Well, I appreciate that, but I've also been doing it for a very, very long time, and you're still a young man in high school, so
yeah.
I gotta give credit where it's due, my man.
I really enjoy being with I think I'm the same as you were. Like I like being with little guys. Like it's fun. Because I remember when I was a little kid, like specifically like Cole Urbis, like he would always give me like a fist bump, and that would just make me feel like $1 million. Like, man, it's the coolest thing. Like, when your friends are like, when they're a lot older than you and they still like value you, like you feel awesome. It makes you feel great.
Absolutely.
And so like really, I know how good it feels to have someone older than you take interest in you, even though they don't have to, or they're not being paid to or anything like that. It's a special thing. So
absolutely. I remember my first year of coaching state college youth. Cole Urbis was, I want to say 6th grade maybe, and he was the same height as me, as a 6th grader, and now University of Penn, and he's clearly not the same height as me.
No, he kind of has to duck his head when he walks in rooms. He doesn't want to scrape the ceiling. Wow, what a throwback! All the way Cole Urbis in 6th grade.
He still makes the same faces as he does. He did then as he does now. So.
He looks identical. Just exactly the same.
He really does.
Man. So do you want to talk about M2 a little bit? Do you want to talk about the creation of M2 and how it all got started?
Sure.
So at what point I know that David would had this idea, but at what point did you get started into the M2?
Well, I was running a youth program at Indy Line Wrestling Club, and I kind of wanted to. We were running it out of Penn State's room, and I kind of wanted a place where I could make my own rules, per se.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started toying with the idea of creating a wrestling club, and I was going to move forward with a gentleman and we were going to maybe build a facility or renovate a building. And, the wheels were in motion. We were looking for real estate and all this stuff. And then it just kind of never really got off the ground. The season snuck around, and next thing I know, I'm doing coaching responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so shortly after that, David approached me because he was always asking me. He's like, "Are you going to do this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to do this." Yeah. And I think secretly, he was trying to do the same thing. So he finally approaches me, and he's like, "Hey, let's do this." He's like, "I'll take care of setting everything up. I need you to be my head coach." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Because I'm not the most organized individual. Now I've gotten a lot better at it. I'll give myself a little credit.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool because, now I show up to M2 and I coach you guys. And and it works out pretty good because David is still training. And so the head coach responsibilities fall on my shoulders, and I'm able to alleviate that from his. So we had that first building down in Julian, Pennsylvania. You remember that? 2 mats, and it was just under 2 mats, and a tiny little lobby, and we piled in there, and we had some killer workouts and camps, and then we had it was tight.
It was still a little toasty. I remember you'd walk in there and it would hit you, the heat and the sweat. It would be like, whoa.
Well, there was no ventilation really, and there was that big giant metal propane heater at the top of the building.
Yeah,
you had to start an hour before practice because it was 15 degrees that winter, and
yeah, freezing.
And there was nowhere for that sweat and air to go.
It's just condensated on the windows and stuff. And I would during the drink breaks or whatever, I would go outside and just breathe cold air, because it was really hot.
But that was a great place to test the waters with what we were trying to do, and and everybody really didn't complain. They were really excited about what we had to offer, and technique and mentality and everything. And that it's because of that first room that we had that we were able to find that second facility, and bam, now we have an awesome facility with 3 mats and a huge lobby and 2 bathrooms and just everything.
Plenty of ventilation.
It could be a little better, but hey, it is definitely better than that old building. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, yeah. I don't. Let's see. So I was it was right before my 8th grade. So 2 years ago. Is this gonna be the third, the start of the 3rd year of M2?
Correct.
Wow. No, yeah. I remember the first day. There was a lot of people there for a first practice. And I remember
we were the new kids in town.
Yeah, but it was cool because it showed, and people stuck around in those first months. There was a lot of people, and it really showed there's interest, and that there was a need for a new club in Center County.
Oh yeah.
Man, sorry, I got a bunch of memories going.
Nostalgic memories. Well, let's talk about this, Jude. How about the opportunities that I had when I was a kid were kind of scarce, right?
Right.
And now kids these days have just an incredible amount of opportunities. Now you have technique available online. You have wrestling's on TV. Yeah, it's not on as much as we would want, but you can still watch wrestling on TV, and you got Flow Wrestling putting out all kinds of competitions and content, track wrestling. You have access to high-level coaches now. You got guys like David Taylor, who's a world champion, coaching kids. I mean, that was unheard of. It was unheard of back when I was a child.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how far our sports come with that. And just, it's awesome to see these people take, like yourself, take advantage of the opportunities and make something of their careers and what they want to do with wrestling.
Mm-hmm. It's, and I had mentioned this to you, but that's a really I think that's a direct reason of why our youth kids and our high school kids are just getting better and better and getting more and more ready for college, like before they even go to college. And that just elevates our entire sport, and our level of wrestling just keeps getting better and better and better. And so much that like they they look like different sports now that our high school wrestling now than our high school wrestling 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Yep, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jude.
It's crazy. All right, okay. Let's see. So I say we've been going for about an hour. I say we answer some questions, and then we can call it a show. So, all right.
Wait a second. Where do these questions come from? Twitter?
Yeah.
Like, did you put up on Twitter like you'll be talking with me, and then people like send in questions?
Well, so these were questions set into on Twitter. I didn't say that I was
okay.
I didn't say I was going with you, Coach Mark.
I was just wondering.
But I did. I was like, hey, we're gonna be doing another show this week, and if you could send in some questions, that would be great. So, thank you so much to the people who sent in questions. All right, so our first one comes from Dominic Deputy, so Coach Mark, did you know that? So, me and my partner Sam.
I know Dominic.
Yeah, me and Sam. Do you know Dominic has his own podcast now?
I spoke briefly with him at the Journeyman Classic 2 weeks ago, and he informed me that he did, and I asked him a few questions about it, and I think that's pretty cool. He's an extraordinary little man.
Yeah, he's real cool. So, guys, go check out Wrestling Recess Podcast. It's with PA Power, and Dom and Dyson Gould do a great job over there. So he asks, how was the cookout? And the answer to that was, it was pretty darn cool. So Scrap Life held a cookout and a photo shoot thingamajigger at M2. And it was like a grilling competition between it was Bo and Jason and Anthony Ashnault. And it was a really fun time. There was a lot of people there. There was delicious food. I got to be a judge for the ribs competition. Coach Mark, these ribs were they were delicious. They were the best ribs ever.
I'm kind of sad I was not smart enough to go to that.
Yeah, listen, they had a ton of food. They had delicious wings and ribs and stuff like that. And it was great. A lot of socializing. It was a fun time. So
I'm glad it turned out well.
Yeah. Let's see. So, and then our next question from JB Colat, he says, Yanni said something to the effect that he wants to wrestle such that even if he is the weaker guy with less of a gas tank and less horsepower, his skills can still get him the win. Can that mentality catch on in the U.S., where pushing a guy physically is part of the wrestling culture? So, do you have an answer to this one, Coach Mark?
Let me see if I understood the question first. So
right.
He's saying to make up for not quite having the best gas tank, that he will make up for it with technique, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Yanni, it was like the U.S. Open, in an interview said something like, even if I'm not like as good as the guy physically, I will still beat him with my wrestling skill.
Well, I think it's not a bad mentality. He's emphasizing, what he does best, and that's being creative with his technique, and it obviously shows when he's wrestling these high level opponents. I mean, he's hitting some crazy stuff, and he has the courage to do that. But I think if it were me, I would maybe focus a little bit more on, if it is the gas tank, well then you should I would think want to be the best at technique and have the biggest gas tank.
Yeah.
So I mean that's kind of how I would like spin that a little bit if it were me.
Be well-rounded in all areas. I feel like for me, especially in high school wrestling, like you don't have to be the strongest guy to win a high school match. You don't have to, you don't have to have the biggest muscles or be the most explosive, because a lot of high school wrestling is a mental game, and just asserting your dominance regardless of the dude you're wrestling. And a lot of it's technique, because a lot of high school kids don't really have that good technique. So, for me right now,
I was kind of like Yanni, where I made up for. I was a little undersized, and I made up for it with technique and
yeah.
but I did have a pretty good gas tank too. So it kind of, there. What do you think about this? There's 3 areas, right? You need to be in shape, you need to be strong, and you need to be technique, or you need to have technique. So, most of the time, a wrestler might have one of those, 2 of those, or a really great one has all 3.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just kind of a neat little theory that maybe you could win with 2, but to be great, you might need all 3.
You need all 3 to dominate.
To dominate. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a fun question.
That was a fun question. Okay, so our last one comes from Tony Rotundo, he's our sponsor. Coach Mark, did you know we have a sponsor?
No, but that's I believe I know Tony. I mean, I know his name. I've been around wrestling for so long. I know I've heard it. How do I know Tony, Jude?
Yeah, okay. Tony Rotundo is a photographer.
That's how I know him.
For wrestlersandwarriors.com. Yep. And, he travels all over the country and takes the best photos. Like,
yeah. I tell you what, that's how I know him, because he's captured my some sweet photos of me wrestling for sure.
Oh, nice. Oh, that means they're on his website, which means I'm gonna have a thumbnail for this episode. Sick.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good. All right. So Tony's our sponsor, and he asks, who is gonna be the rep for Team USA at 74 kilograms in 2021? Coach Mark.
I like that.
Who do you think?
Man, that's a wild card question.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at traditionally, right? Sometimes those top level guys, after a Olympic, some retire, some just take breaks. Some take the next year in the world. Man, that is a crazy good question.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Martinez being up there.
Do you feel like Burroughs is still gonna compete in 2021? This will be like what, 10 years or something. Like he won in 2011, and this will be a full 10 years since his first World Championships.
I don't know. I would say probably not, but I can't, know for sure. I mean, look how long Jordan's been doing it. Like,
yeah,
I mean, that's what that man does. He just wins high level competitions at the world and Olympic level. So can you ever really count him out? No. But if I was kind of more of a betting man, I'd probably pick somebody that's a little bit more of a dark horse. And now that I think about it, I might have said Martinez, but what about some of these PSU boys that are going to be graduating, like Vincenzo and Hall, and stuff like that. It's I tell you what, Jude, that is a hard question, because of just the caliber and the quantity of which we are producing American wrestlers.
Yeah. And, like the focus on, freestyle and Greco from like a younger age, such as like, Fargo, but also like now we're filling cadet teams and we're having cadet world champions, junior world champions, and a lot more focus on that,
Yep.
Like from a young person, like there's so much more awareness now about, that kind of thing, and that just helps kids set goals, and the best guys can now go and be the very, very best guys. So it's
anybody's ball game, Tony.
I think it's we don't know who it's gonna be, Tony. All right.
Oh my gosh, that's mind-boggling,
isn't it? It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay. So I think that about does it for our show, for the most part. I think we covered all the bases. We got through everything we wanted to talk about. My question to you, Coach Mark, is do you have any parting thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
I did not hear any of that, Swisher. You cut out just as you said, do you have any blank?
All right, here we go. Do you have any parting thoughts that you would like to leave our listeners with?
Yes, I would. I want everybody that wrestles to remember to enjoy it. It's a challenging sport. It's physically and mentally demanding, but in order to have success, whether it's winning one dual meet a year or winning a state championship or whatever, you got to make sure you enjoy it, or else is it really worth it?
Right.
And, so I'd say just enjoy it. It's a wonderful thing to be a part of, and it can take you places, and you can make a career of it now. So,
yeah. And that's good life advice too, right? Just be enjoying where you're at, being grateful and appreciative for all the things you got in your life. Man, it's pretty cool. Most
definitely, young, for sure. Most definitely.
All right. So, Coach, thank you so much for coming on this interview episode of Home Mat Advantage. Thanks for taking the time out and figuring out the wonders of Skype.
That was on your end, man. You're the one that pulled through. I was on the struggle bus trying to remember a password. So.
Yeah. Well, it's just because I'm young and I'm growing up in this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I still struggle a little bit with technology. I'm learning.
You'll get there.
Yeah, someday.
You'll get there, Coach Mark. All right. Thank you guys for listening, and hopefully we will be back next week with another episode. So thank you guys so much.